Welcome back. Well, a meeting at the former President Jacob Zuma's Nkandla homestead this week has thrown a spanner in the works, it seems, for the RET faction of the ANC, if in fact we can call it that. There's reporting that this meeting endorsed the candidacy of Dr Nkosazana Dlamini-Zuma, the cooperative governance minister, to become ANC leader. At the same time, top officials of the KwaZulu-Natal ANC and the leadership in Mpumalanga met yesterday to chart a roadmap ahead of the December conference, or to put it another way, to conduct some horse trading. Our senior politics reporter Ziyanda Ngcobo joins me now in our studio. Ziyanda, good afternoon to you. There's a lot going on here. The sort of weekend, do we still call it a bombshell, that Dlamini-Zuma wants to contest? I mean, it would seem it looks very similar to 2017. A lot's changed since then. Does she really have a realistic prospect?
A lot has changed since then, even in terms of, how provinces are likely to vote. So, for instance, at the time, Dr Nkosazana Dlamini-Zuma had the support of a sitting president in the form of, former President Jacob Zuma. And there was a whole lot more influence across provinces, whether it's in Mpumalanga, Eastern Cape, and so forth. It would seem for now that the candidacy of Dr Dlamini-Zuma is likely to only take hold, maybe even in small fractions, only in KwaZulu-Natal. But also, this throws a spanner into the works for the RET faction, in the sense that it's not just her who is trying to fish from that so-called RET pond. There's also Lindiwe Sisulu. There's also Dr Zweli Mkhize, who's been hitting the ground running in KwaZulu-Natal and in the Eastern Cape in terms of trying then to garner that support ahead of the conference. So, interesting that a lot of developments have taken place over the last few days. The NEC sat this past weekend where they ratified now the nominations process, which means the branch audits would have then been confirmed. Then there was that meeting at the former president's home where he's said to have actually endorsed, her candidacy. But also now you have a situation where you have the two provinces coming together, the top officials, to discuss the roadmap, which is essentially, I'd say, the horse trading, as you've mentioned, of which names and who brings what to the table, essentially.
It seems that there's no clarity on what's going to happen. Now, sure, it's early days in the race, except that it isn't. We're actually towards the end of the race if you take the race as a 5-year process. It seems quite odd that, sure, we have one clear candidate, President Ramaphosa, everyone knows, but we don't really have another. I mean, apart from Dlamini-Zuma, we keep on having all of these names. There's been no clear, proud, strong gesture of support. In 2012, you knew in 2017 that it was probably going to be Dlamini-Zuma and Ramaphosa. It's very different now.
It's very different, and I'd say that what I've heard from sources within the RET camp is that it's part of their strategy. They strongly believe that anybody who puts their hand up faces the prospect of being on the wrong side of law enforcement agencies. I mean, we could debate whether or not that's actually substantiated. But, their strategy, it would seem, is to work the ground and keep quiet and keep their cards very close to their chest, so that the prospect of nominating someone from the floor is going to be part and parcel of their strategy. We saw that at the Musadladla conference, where basically at least 3 of the top officials in that particular region, where former President Jacob Zuma and Senzo Mchunu hail from, were nominated from the floor. So it completely threw off everybody. The same thing happened with the provincial elective conference, where names that weren't necessarily the front runners or being touted in the run-up, were elected from the floor and are now in the leadership. And it's part and parcel of having so many names that are being touted that you actually just can't tell. And I think that's actually part of the strategy on the part of RET. So for all we know, it could very well be that Dr Dlamini-Zuma is also a decoy for the real candidate who could actually emerge from the floor in December.
I wouldn't want to be the one to tell her that she was a decoy. I've got to tell you, I wouldn't want to be that person. We also have the race for deputy leader. And it seems to me that we've never seen so many people being touted. We've got Ronald Lamola, we've got Mameloko Kubai, we've also got Paul Mashatile, David Mabuza, perhaps. I saw a story today, I think it's a Wetton reporting, that Stella Ndabeni Abrahams may also be nominated. It goes on and on.
And that's the problem here then becomes the numbers, Stephen, because when you have so many candidates, you're all fishing from the same pond. So, for an example, in the Eastern Cape, you have someone like a Dr. Zweli Mkhize and a Ronald Lamola and a Paul Mashatile who are said to all be trying to get support from bits and pieces of the Eastern Cape. A similar story is also apparently unfolding in KwaZulu-Natal, where Paul Mashatile, Dr. Zweli Mkhize and Lindiwe Sisulu are all vying for the support of KwaZulu-Natal, which probably explains why the provincial secretary there, Begum Tolo, has basically said, we are going to leave this to the branches of the ANC, because there's also the risk of when you as the leadership, you sort of pronounce that the branches then decide to go against that, and also the perception that the leadership of the ANC is imposing certain people upon the branches. So it becomes very difficult, what exactly is guiding as well the branches in this process? Is it ideology? Is it this gender and generational mix? What do they have to put on the table, given the fact that 2024 is around the corner? And, this is actually what a lot of provinces, we'd like to think, should be looking at when looking at the top leadership, the top six structure actually in total.
It's very interesting that, because, again, I don't know if Dlamini-Zuma helps the ANC win votes in 2024. If certain people are deputy president, they could also win or cost the ANC votes. But I'm also not seeing a further direction after Ramaphosa if he wins another term.
Well, that's a very interesting, question and comment, Stephen, because this is exactly it, right? Because whilst we're still looking at president and deputy president, there's also the possibility of a lot of horse trading for the position of secretary general. That position becomes very critical. You would have heard the names of David Makura, Mdumiseni Ntuli being amongst those being touted to become secretary general, because the stability of the top six is actually what the ANC needs, let alone just the president or the deputy president, especially in the SGO, where you are the custodian of the branches, which would mean, in turn, election machinery ahead of the 2024 election. And if you don't hit the ground running, listen to what the electorate is saying right now. I think, as you've mentioned, you're not sure whether or not someone would be appealing to the electorate. Well, the ANC could only literally have to pin its hope on President Cyril Ramaphosa, as many have said.
Ziyanda Ngcobo, thanks very much indeed. Our senior political reporter, unlikely to be bored between now and December.